Welcome, everyone, to our Sunday Macro Live. And tonight I'm excited, or for you guys this morning, afternoon, I'm excited that we have an amazing guest with us, Amit from Vetable. And my co host is already here. Wow, you are on. So, us all in. Let's see. Instagram always likes to be a little bit funny. Let's see. I have to do it the other way. Hello,
Hey,
sir. How are you?
good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. So I
Awesome.
have to say, I am really excited about this conversation. Besides Derek, I think you're probably one of the guests that comes on that's really into the AI space, working in this space. This is what you do. So, considering the economy that we're in and the changes in the environment, I think that you have a lot to bring. And I can see everybody's excited. The people are rolling in like top of the hour, do not miss. So, tell tell our guests, tell us who you are, tell us about Vetable, tell us about the Right Sea, tell us about whatever it is that you want to share, because
Yeah.
you're young, but you've had so much experience in life in this space. So,
Yeah,
congratulations
absolutely.
to you.
I appreciate
I think I lost him. Is that from my side or his side? Let's see if I can get him back on. Instagram always likes to be complicated. Maybe I have to go out and come back in. Oh, okay, it's his.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
that was
welcome
super
back.
weird. Yeah, no worries. Literally as soon as I was about to speak,
Mhm.
Instagram just like was like, nah, it's not your time to shine, bro. No, I appreciate that intro. Yeah, by way of
They like
introduction.
resilience. They like you to demonstrate resilience.
Yeah, I'm gonna just keep on jumping back into the meeting for sure. No, I appreciate that. To your point, I am young, but I've been in this space for a while. I'll give like a brief intro so people can really understand like the caliber of person that I am and like what I do. So by way of introduction, my name is Amit Nath. I'm Guyanese. I was born and raised in New York. I basically went to public high school and like the learning public like way, and basically went to college. I went to Hofstra University. I played lacrosse there. Um, After I played lacrosse at Hofstra, I decided to study something called sustainability studies and geographic information systems, and I minored in engineering, which was great. I realized that the world needs change agents, and that's kind of what
Mhm.
I set myself up to. Shout out New York, yes, yes, yes. And the New York Atlas team just won the PLL for the first time ever, and I know a couple guys on the team, so super excited about that. So when I was in college, I ended up getting a master's in sustainability. I graduated, and I realized that there were no jobs in the environmental space that I really wanted. So my best friend from high school, Brandon Mitchell, he was starting an e-commerce resume writing company, and I said, you know what, this is a really great idea. He's started companies before, and I just decided to jump on board. So that's when Brand Resumes was born, which we were on the goal of basically helping people with their resumes to get jobs in the space.
Mhm.
Like our highest package was like $1,000, and we would jump on like 15-minute phone calls and then just sell to people and be able to help them get their dream jobs within 30 to 90 days. And it made us feel super accomplished. And at the time, that's something called bootstrapping a business, where you're not having investors back you, but you're just being backed by your own money that you're circling
Mhm.
within your business. And I realized from a sustainability perspective, that's just not the most efficient way to run a business. Um,
Mhm.
Especially because the money that was coming in, it was going out. So we were just like, we're not going to reach financial freedom this way. So then we discovered venture capital and what venture capital was. Decided to take the e-commerce company and turn it into a SaaS company, where we went to market as an order of operations kind of white label SaaS platform. and we were able to lock in $2.5 million from venture capital funds like Collab Capital, Bronze VC, Atento, and one of our investors was out in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So when we accept capital out there, we had to move out there, which was
I
great.
was wondering what took you to Tulsa, Oklahoma. It seemed a little bit around the way because I actually thought you were born in Guyana. So I was like, how is he Guyanese? And then in New York and now in Tulsa. And Tulsa just seemed so random, but now it makes sense.
Yeah, everyone was saying that. Like, what are you doing in Tulsa, Oklahoma? What, like, that's such a random place. But actually, Tulsa, Oklahoma is really where a lot of America had its roots. Like, it was known as Black Wall Street. Some of the most wealthiest people went to Tulsa, Oklahoma because it was an oil and gas state. And there was something called the Tulsa Race Massacres, where they basically annihilated everyone of like color, and they basically had to start over fresh. So I thought going to Tulsa, Oklahoma was a really big mission,
Mm,
because we wanted to stimulate the economy. For those of you that don't know, startups are one of the biggest economic factors in places to drive economic stability and wealth because of the fact that startups hire aggressively. So if you're a startup
hmm
going to a place, you're going to unlock a bunch of jobs for people, and that's what they kind of wanted was, okay, if we're going to give you this XYZ amount of money, part of your fundraising round, we want you to move here and then help stimulate the economy by
hmm
hiring people locally, right?
hmm
And that was just something that was just a huge calling to us because we were already helping people get jobs.
hmm
So why not move to, West Bubblefuck, Oklahoma, and basically try to stimulate as much of the economy as possible. And that went great.
hmm
And that's where Rightsy was born. We ended up making a couple pivots, but we were actually one of the first AI companies in the job board space. So anytime you went to a job board and you would like
hmm
fill out an account, it asked you, hey, do you want a free resume review? That was our company on the back end giving you a free AI resume review. And this was
Okay.
before ChatGPT was even out.
Well,
And
yeah,
that went
yeah.
really great. We ended up pivoting into like an AI career mobility suite, and Rightsy is still around. Like I got nothing but love for those guys, because that's kind of really what set my foundation as a first time
hmm
tech founder. And then 2025 was really when I wanted to take life into my own hands, and I met with my team, and we decided that this was great for me to take this from 0 to 1, but I'm not going to be the guy to take it from 1 to 10, right? And I really
hmm
enjoy taking things from 0 to 1. And I realized that there was a bigger problem out there, which is this new problem of like venture deserts, right?
hmm
And when I say venture deserts, it's like, okay, a bunch of startups are now being invested by venture capital or investors, and they come to this area. But what happens when these startups no longer have those fundings that they've raised? And what happens if those startups aren't doing the revenue numbers and they don't have the momentum? Then they're not able to actually continue to grow, and now it's coined as a venture desert because they're just coming there and they're kind of dying. So like
hmm
that kind of rolls into Vetable, and the mission behind Vetable is to help startups understand, hey, do you have a fundable business, and what
hmm
is it?
Wait, did I lose your sound? Am I the only one?
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
now I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, so I was basically saying, from a startup standpoint, a lot of the startups that I was surrounded myself with, they were great companies, great founders, amazing people, but also some of the newer ones, I'm like, okay, they don't know what a data room is, they don't understand, what is a CAC, what is LTV. Just a lot of these big jargon buzzwords, a lot of first-time
hmm
founders don't know, right? So I was like, okay, how can I basically create like a credit score system to let you know is your startup investable or not, giving you the insights on what it's going to take to make your startup even more fundable and profitable,
hmm
letting you know like your competitive edge against your different competitors, letting you know what do you need to do to reach XYZ milestone, giving you like a 90-day roadmap, letting you know your financials, letting you know your market opportunity, justifying it, and then also being able to bridge the connection between your company and other institutional or other investors that want to back your company based off of their investment thesis.
hmm
And that's where we introduced like AI match scoring, and then we built in our own bank encrypted like data room to like have you have like a secured location of where all of your startup documents are located, because typically when you have a startup, you're going and you're pitching investors, and if the investor likes you, then they'll say, okay,
Hmm.
send me to your data room. And right now
Right.
people are being sent to like Google Drive and OneDrives, and these are not the most secure locations. So
Hmm.
and then also these locations, there's no roadmap to tell you what do you need to have exactly in this position to
Hmm.
then attract investors. So that's when we decided to build like a data room a part of it, and our investor network. And I'm just super excited for what we're doing for startups, and it's absolutely free. You can get signed up today at getvetable.com. And then from the investor standpoint, we realized that the due diligence process is kind of broken, right?
Hmm.
For quite some time, people have been looking at companies and just basically making assumptions based off of past companies that were in the same similar space, right?
Hmm.
So how do we break that? How do we demystify it? And how do we decentralize it so, the Sequoias of the world, the A16s of the world aren't the only top venture capital firms that are getting these amazing startups? And how do we
Hmm.
take companies that are in a place like Tulsa, Oklahoma, and get them backed by like a Saudi Arabia sovereign capital fund, right?
Hmm.
Like this is what we're building here. I'm super excited
Hmm.
about it. We've been heads down for the past 8 months. We had our product in beta for the past 2 weeks, and now we've kind of released it to the masses,
Hmm.
but still very
Yeah, I saw
intimate
you
on.
recently had an event. A couple of people I know were sharing your sharing your event.
Yeah, yeah. We're actually doing like a product unveiling at the
Hmm.
Tech Wealth Summit from the Come Up series and FTC. And that's going
Okay.
to be later this week. So that's going to be on the 18th to the 20th in Seattle. So those of you that are on here that
Hmm.
are going to go, super excited to meet you and get you on the platform, startups
Hmm.
and investors. And one thing I left out was a part of this whole journey of, going to college, being raised in a Guyanese household, understanding how to really like work with my hands and be humble enough to like really figure out problems myself before AI. And now that we have AI and making like ourselves more productive with AI, right? Because I believe that AI is going to help us with the next future of work, but it's going
Hmm.
to also take jobs away, but it's the jobs that are no longer going to be necessary, right? Like think about it.
Hmm.
When Nokia phones were out or before social media was out, there was no social media manager job,
Hmm.
right? These were jobs that were created, but what did that do to the other jobs that were out there, right?
Hmm.
So I say this to say that I'm a very well versatile person. Um,
Hmm.
I know a lot of different markets. I started my option journey my sophomore year of college at Hofstra University in my dorm room, and I have never looked back since. Um, and I just take pride in free financial literacy and just helping people like lifting as we climb. And yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. I'm excited to tell you guys what I've been kind of working on with Vetable, and yeah, just jumping right into it. I'll kind of keep it brief.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing is phenomenal. I think that in the last 5, 6 lives, there's constantly the conversation. I mean, you can't get away from the labor market, how AI is impacting the labor market, how AI is impacting how companies are hiring. And like you said, with every problem, there's always some kind of solution, but you have to be flexible to decide that it's okay that things don't work out the same way that it did, like for your parents or your grandparents, that you are living in a very particular time and a particular generation, and AI is here. It's not going anywhere. The type of jobs that are, opening up now are not the same jobs that were around even, when I was looking for a job after my university. But we talk about the issue of like, university students looking for jobs and finding it almost impossible. And then at the same time, seeing, companies like Amazon talk about the number of robots that are working for them and not doing a lot of those entry level jobs, not having to find kind of those new hires or kind of basic like entry level jobs. And I mean, you just can't live without having all of those conversations. And this is really an area where you're an expertise, where you have expertise. So like, what are you seeing? What are you feeling about the, what's coming with the labor market and with AI? I really like that you were already very positive and like optimistic um, about, you know, the opportunities that could present themselves. So I like that you're already kind of starting
Yeah.
from that space. But yeah, tell me what you're thinking, what you're seeing, because I know
Yeah.
you're in the lots of areas of the economy,
Yeah.
not just startups.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because I had a conversation with the CEO of a really big job board about like 3 months ago, and when we were going to expect potentially like the next market correction, until we then jump into like the higher 700, 7,000s of the S&P, right? Um, I think right now we're in a space that is very like morphic, like basically the unemployment rates are starting to skyrocket. We're seeing revisions in the numbers and more people that are out of
Hmm.
jobs. And if you actually look into the numbers, it's really the older population that's starting to be displaced and the
Hmm.
younger population that's also starting to be displaced as well. So it's kind of like in the middle of where, okay, I'm really moldable. I'm a sponge. I can learn a lot,
Hmm.
but I just need the opportunity. So a lot of
Hmm.
kids that are graduating college right now, they're realizing that what they graduated in college with is really not necessarily relevant to the times that we're in if you don't have
Hmm.
any AI skills attached to it, right? And I think that's
Hmm.
why OpenAI came out and said that, hey, we're going to create a LinkedIn competitor. Although we're, in the playground of Microsoft, this idea of the next future of work, especially in the AI space, is just so much bigger than a LinkedIn or whatever, right? And they have the
Hmm.
backings of the United States government to help them with it. So I think that they're really going to tackle and create like trades and skills and certifications and courseworks and things like this to kind of replace the college status quo of going to college and studying
Hmm.
XYZ and then coming out and graduating, because they're seeing that the people that are graduating, even like Harvard grads, they're graduating and they're not locking in their jobs, right? And what does that
Hmm.
show to their placement rates for the universities? How does that affect the grants, the funding programs, the investors of these college
Hmm.
institutions that are investing into colleges because of the fact that they want to see the placements get satisfied?
Yeah.
So I think that we're
Yeah,
we're seeing
nobody's
like a
spending
huge shift.
$250,000 for a
No.
degree and then having their kids spend another year or 2 years searching for a job. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And now people are thinking like, hey, do I really need a resume or do I just need a really good network? Right.
Hmm.
And I would say that honestly, being in this space and helping out over 2 million people over the past 5 years, it's really your network is your net worth. Like you can go and
Hmm.
take all the certifications and the classes and all that, but like the people that you meet while you're taking these certifications are really what's going to set you up for success moving forward.
Hmm.
Like, yes, having a basis foundation of understanding how to use tools and understand methodologies and things like that, like that's going to help you in the greater good of society. But overall, it's like, who do you know and who can put you in the position? So since I moved back from Tulsa to New York, I've just been leveraging the heck out of my network, and I've realized that that
Hmm.
was just way more powerful than me trying to do anything else, because
Hmm.
I can go and touch and reach more people just by putting out a certain message out there because of my brand, right?
Hmm.
So when it came to Vetable and showing and showcasing Vetable, because I'm not the CEO of Vetable, right? Bethany's the CEO and she's an amazing CEO. I'm the co-founder and chief revenue officer because my skill set is sales and revenue and just driving the business and marketing, right? When it
Hmm.
comes to a rollout though, I believe with whoever's watching this, live, before you build your company brand, build your own personal brand, because people will
Hmm.
resonate in your self-directed story more and they will love the company because of you,
Hmm.
right? And once you
That is
build your
some
own
good
personal
advice. I don't know if
brand,
there's anybody watching on here that's young or has young kids going into the market. I mean, it is it is so true that it is all about who you are and finding that that connection, because people are, I mean, this is I miss multiple streams of income. She's always telling me this, that even before somebody buys from you or connects with you or wants to reach out and work with you or collaborate with you, they have to have like hours of time. There needs to be almost like an intimacy developed with you, even if that's done like via social media or YouTube or whatever, or like phone conversations or WhatsApp. But there has to be a certain amount of connectivity before people are going to like jump in bed with you. And that's just, I mean, no matter how technical we get and how technology moves forward, there's still something innate in our like humanity to our survival that I have to know you before I'm going to start taking any kind of risk, put myself at any risk in a relationship with you. So, I
I
mean,
agree.
what you're saying is it's like it makes so much sense, and it's just such important information for all aspects of life, not just if you're looking for specifically for that startup capital. And just the reality of networking is it's true. I mean, people burn bridges really fast, and sometimes in very, like strange things will happen and they just will burn up bridges. And then years later, they'll find themselves, regretting those things that they said that they didn't like
I
maybe
agree.
have a little bit more patience in the conversation, because you never know who you're going to need later on down the line.
But
Uh,
to that point, right? I think that being in this tech era, there are websites like testimonial.io that you can go on and then add it to your website, and you can see when you're looking at your website after that, you can see all these testimonials that are there to back why you're so credible, right? And if you
mhm,
think about it, dated back, that's why the BBB came out, right? The Better Business
mhm,
Bureau came out, so people can basically vet your company before they even buy your business, right? And
mhm,
coming back full circle, that's why we have Vetable, hence the name Vetable, is to vet
mhm,
these startups with a score to let these investors know, like, hey, they're on Vetable one, so they're already attached to the ecosystem, and then two, these are the things that you want to look out for, and these are the things that will make this company a non risk for your portfolio.
mhm. In this economy, if let's say that you were generating the score, the viability score of these companies, what are some like startups that right now you think, if I found a startup that was dealing with this kind of social or AI or technical problem, they could find funding straight away? What would be something that's just like this is so needed right now?
Yeah,
What
that's a great
concept is
question.
that?
That's oh, you set me up. I like that. I like that you set me up good. I'd say climate tech. I think climate tech is the biggest future endeavor for like the world because we're seeing a lot of different level of funds come out specifically for theses to invest in climate tech companies. The reason why I say climate tech is because back in the day we came out with something called SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals,
Hmm.
and the whole world needed to kind of come to these numbers before a specific time before we roll
Hmm.
out the next set of SDGs, right? And I think it's really focused on reducing, reusing, recycling, and also understanding, okay, equal food for everybody, equal water for everybody, housing, shelter, work. That's why people like Mr. Beast and what he was doing for the cocoa industry and how he wanted to basically create chocolate that wasn't made from people that were enslaved, right? Or
Hmm.
like what he's doing with water and being able to give people equal access to water. Like Mr. Beast is so smart and he's like around the same age as me. And it's just the fact that he understands that for the economy to grow, you need people and you need the planet to continue to have a place for us to live.
Hmm.
So if you're not helping the planet, then you're hurting the planet. And
Hmm.
it's something that I thought was going to happen before this AI boom was a greenflation event. Basically,
Hmm.
when all these companies are now saying, "Okay, fuck, we need all these resources and people of power put in place so we can save the
Hmm.
planet as fast as possible." I say that from a fundamental basis because when I was in college, I did a study abroad in the Amazon rainforest. So I saw sea level rise firsthand. So I'm a full proponent on like, okay, this planet is dying and there's
Hmm.
companies that are out there like Apple that are at the forefronts of it all buying carbon credits from all these other companies to basically offset their carbon footprint, which will make it an even better investment for equity holders in the future, right?
Hmm.
Similar to how like Elon, when he first did Tesla, like his thesis was sustainable, right? It was It was to basically
Hmm.
lower the carbon footprint of like the whole world through Tesla. And I believe that once he gets back to that into all of
Hmm.
his companies and every great CEO gets back to that, then those are the companies that are going to be able to thrive in this next generational market.
And you don't think the political environment has stepped away from that? Because I know that for a lot of companies, I mean, under Biden, I mean, just like by background, because both my dad and my stepdad were in the oil industry. And, like the last 5, 6 years, the oil industry has just made a massive shift into renewables, into green energy, and made massive investments to kind of update their systems to get to increase productivity, to increase efficiency, but also to reduce their carbon footprint overall. And then with the new administration, there is this constant kind of like bubbling under the surface, like was all of this kind of a waste of money? Because actually now it doesn't really matter what we do, and now we're going to be fighting with our shareholders because we owe them the best return on their investment. And that's not necessarily going to come because we're doing things in the most sustainable fashion. So, I mean, I find it very interesting that you talk about the fact that like climate tech is actually kind of like the problem solved that needs to happen. But the political environment doesn't give me the feeling that's where the government funding is going to be going. But maybe I'm wrong.
No,
So.
no, no. To your point, right? Why would I go and put everybody else onto something like think about from the government perspective, right? And the people that are running the government, you don't believe that they're loading up the boat on companies like Tesla and things like that while they're pushing other type of policies, so other people don't understand and they don't ride that wealth wave. There's the reason why the 1% is the 1%, and it's because you can't get in the rooms that they can get into, right? But because
Hmm.
of the internet, and we're in the age of the internet, the information is decentralized, and we have ChatGPT, we have Claude, we have Grok, we have Perplexity, we have all these different LLMs that are now like brainchilds to help guide us into the next direction of okay, how what's the most smartest way that we can position ourselves to have a more sustainable future.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that at the end of the day, that's why I love the poly markets and these different things that are about to come out into Robinhood, because now you're going to get to track the whales of the worlds and be able to see exactly what are they buying. Like they can say one thing, but what is their portfolio showing,
Hmm.
right? And just to come full circle on that question, I think just the future of like the next 5 years is going to be climate tech and future of work as well. Because how are we going to
Hmm.
be able to satisfy this demand for all these companies that are coming out? And we need to make sure that these people are equipped to go hire and get hired for these roles. Because as a past founder, one of the greatest expenses that I had, as a business owner was human capital. um, you know,
Hmm.
it wasn't the tech that I was spending because the margins are so sexy that you're really not spending anything, and that's why everyone and their mother
Hmm.
is coming out with an AI company is because it's so affordable to run the company, but it's the
Hmm.
people that you have behind your company that is going to cost you the most.
Yep, it's very true. So Jerry commented, the country will die if we allow it to, but technology is slowly allowing us to be a part of the progress. And I think that's true, that now we're in a where people can't hide from conversations if they're important enough to the people. So by getting the people to actually participate in the conversation sometimes is the difficult process. But I have to
That's a good
say,
point.
I I'm also, I'm very surprised by the number of people that, so I mean, being in Europe, it's difficult to be a climate change denier, that it's not really a European thing. But in America, whenever I go back to the States, I'm always surprised by the number of people that are like really hardcore, almost like anti anything. I mean, you know, related to climate change and sustainability. And then I think, how is the rest of the world having one conversation and then people in America are having really not all of America, but that there's a loud enough voice that's having an entirely different conversation than everybody else. I'm not really sure how. like the American society has become so bifurcated because it feels like everything is like you're either all in or all out. And that's probably that's one of the reasons why maybe I'm a little bit biased in the sense that like it felt like, man, are we ever going to go anywhere with climate tech? Because it felt like you're either all in the conversation or all out. And there's like almost, the loudest voices are on the extremes. Not that there's nobody sitting in the middle, but the loudest voices just feel so combative on the topic. But it's good to
Yeah.
hear that you're not seeing, well, I shouldn't say not seeing that, but that you're seeing that climate tech is still a space that is um, growing and expanding.
To
And
your
for somebody
point.
that studied sustainability, that means a lot because you know this.
Yeah. 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 If you anyone that's looking here, right, I implore you to go on Google and type in like happiness index of countries in the world, right? And there's an
Mhm.
index to see where are the most happiest people in the world, and then it's not in America, right? And there's a reason why it's not in America. And then if you go and look at the top number one country in the happiness index and then cross reference it to their like sustainability initiatives, you'll see that the people there
Hmm.
are invested into the planet and they don't care about the other things that are holding us back, like the materialistic things. They appreciate clean access to water drinking. They appreciate, having the ability to grow crops that are non-GMO, right? They appreciate the fact that all their food don't have red dye and don't have any trans fats that are in it, right? That
Hmm.
is what's attributing to their happiness, and also the equal access to transportation, right? Having bikeable streets, right? There. If you look at the technology when it comes to climate within the rest of the scope of the world outside of the United States, like for instance, for Germany, Germany has like a certain type of road that's not made out of like tar, but basically when you drive on the road it generates electricity and then recirculates it to the grid, right? This
Hmm.
overall is going to lower the electricity cost of like the entire place because it's self-sustaining, right? there's
Hmm.
there's a reason why in America there's certain things that we don't have access to, or there's certain things that are not like the status quo. It's because of the policies and the legislations that are in there. But I encourage everyone that as you travel the world, you'll be able to see like places where there's a garbage can, but it's not just a garbage can. It's like recycling, composting, this all in one, right?
Hmm.
And I take this from a company's perspective because when you're a more established company, it's harder to pivot into a different niche, right? But when you're a
Hmm.
startup, it's easy for you to move here and there, right? So I take this from
Hmm.
the opportunity of like understanding countries. There's a reason why like tropical countries have been, flourishing off of ecotourism for so long, but those same companies that have been using ecotourism to generate their, GDP growth are the same
Hmm.
companies that are now, being less reliant on other countries for their stimulus because they're self-dependent and they're self-sufficient, right? And
Hmm.
those are the countries that you're seeing the happiest people because they're not
Hmm.
worried about the materialistic things.
Yeah. It's very true. It's very, very true. Except for Dubai. I think Dubai might be one of the most materialistic countries, but I think they're quite high up there on the happiness index. I mean, I think they have like the minister of happiness, actually, because it's like so much a part of their ethos. Um, so, but so something that I like stumbled upon during the week, as I was thinking and just your expertise overall in AI. I was looking at, there was this graph that was looking at, where is GDP growth and where is the economic growth happening right now? And it basically demonstrated that AI growth is like just straight up, but everything else in the every other like sector is basically in a recession. And I'm not sure if like from your point of view that you feel the same way, that the growth is entirely AI driven, and then like all the other sectors are basically contracting. And if AI hadn't had this massive boom as an economy, we would be feeling like we were in a recession.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the numbers, right, the writing is on the wall that we've already been in a recession, right? We've been in a recession this whole entire year. But what saved us in the stock market terms is the AI, right? But
Hmm.
what really saved us is Nvidia. Let's keep it a buck. Um, with them being able to continuously create that ecosystem nest for all these bigger companies to kind of come in and latch onto. That was kind of their saving graces, right? And you're
Hmm.
seeing like legacy dinosaurs like Oracle come out of the woodworks, but Oracle has been like that stepchild that was just forgotten about, but they were
Hmm.
still in the picture. And now that they got their shine, they're just going to continuously keep that uptrend and continue to crush it because they're already a well-established company. Now people
Hmm.
are just now understanding like, oh, okay, Oracle actually has a position in this thesis for this AI next generational boom. To
Hmm.
your question on the GDP growth, I think that because we're in this AI era, we're seeing a lot of companies, instead of them dying because of their SaaS method or whatever, they're adding in AI and just slapping on a wrapper and adding in their own data, right? Like
Hmm.
what I've seen was like the AI boom, this
Hmm.
infrastructure boom, and then also understanding how does that work with what are the goals for the world moving forward. And AI is basically lessening the spend for companies to be having lower sexier margins.
Hmm.
It's the people cost at the end of the day, right? And
Hmm.
because unemployment is just a thing that's just continuously creeping up, there's going to eventually be like a break. And I'm talking to some people, and they're saying that, oh, we're gonna see the biggest correction crash in history. But like, I don't know, like from the bubble perspective, yes, we're in an AI bubble, but I just think this is a bubble of steel. Like, it's going to be
Hmm.
super hard to crack because you learn from your mistakes, right? And we've already
Hmm.
went through a bubble before, and that was a whole different type of bubble, but it was a bubble regardless. So now that we're forming this new bubble, they've created like a bubble that was just so, it's hard to ignore the bubble, but it's also hard to think of things that are going to pop this bubble. If you have a company that is leveraging all the greatest companies else, all the other greater companies in the world that are basically bulletproof, then like you're in a bulletproof bubble. Um, and we're probably going to see the markets shooting extremely higher than what we think this bubble is going to crash for. The thing that's
Hmm.
going to set this market to the next correction is another black swan event. And
Right.
from what I've known in my research, is black swan events are low key kind of created like within governments.
Hmm.
Um, like, so it's up to the government to say, okay, and I'm not talking about like just United States. I'm talking about the world government, right? It's up to the
Hmm.
government to say, hey, when is it enough that we just rebounded, and when do we need to correct this for the next generation to come in, right? Because when I first started
Hmm.
trading, Amazon was a $3,000 stock. It was hard for someone to come in and buy a share of Amazon if you didn't
Right.
have the money.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
now, if you actually peep it, all these companies that were $1,000 companies did their stock splits, and they're more
Hmm.
investable for this next future generation to come in and buy
Hmm.
and have this transfer of wealth.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, I think that the other issue is that, part of the whole bubble feel is that money had to be easy to obtain. And for a lot of companies, especially smaller companies, access to cash hasn't really been around for a year and a half, 2 years with rates this high. And And so, I was again, in doing my research for the week going forward. One of the things that I was really surprised by was now, like even with data centers and the capacity to build and the infrastructure, is that there's like I don't want to say like a special mechanism for them to be able to borrow, but their borrowing rate for those types of products is really low in comparison to the borrowing rates and leverage that you can get for other projects. And I think that one of the things that, like, when we were leading up to other bubbles, cash was really easy to get, and lending was really smooth, and you could go to a bank and get a loan to do all kinds of funny business. But that structure just hasn't really been there. Yes, you have massive mega cap companies that are sitting on basically their own treasury, like the treasury of Apple, the treasury of Google. I mean, they have so much cash, but that cash is for their company to do whatever they want. It's not, like a widespread cash is available to everyone. And I almost wonder if that lack of accessible cash that we've had over the last years has potentially protected us from just the rapid pace of just zombie companies popping up everywhere, like we saw in the dot-com era. Now, that's just, from everything I've read, it's just something that's like ruminating in my mind. But I don't know if you have an opinion about that, if you think that that makes sense, or if you have a converse
Yeah.
opinion.
I think back in the day when we had that other bubble, there were no buy now, pay later companies, right? And we're seeing companies like Klarna, Affirm,
Hmm.
we're even seeing companies like Chime, right? We're seeing a lot of these
Hmm.
companies now starting to IPO, and that's creating a liquidity event for their investors like the Sequoias, the A16s, the world, those like tier one VCs, and there's tier two VCs that had the opportunity to invest in them. They've now reached that 10-15 mark where they're getting their capital back. And now that we're in this AI era and all these VC funds are saying that, hey, we're only investing into AI vertical first SaaS companies or whatever, now they have the capital back from these IPO markets to then come back and invest. So now we're seeing like the next 10 years unfold, and like it's so important for these companies to do well, or else these investors that are now re-engaging into their capital, they need to see their money back, or else these VCs aren't going to continue to be in business, right?
Hmm.
We're now seeing family offices kind of step into the equation of, hey, we want to get our skin in the game with startups too.
Hmm.
And that's why I think it's such a very pivotal point for now anyone that's watching this stream to go on a lovable dot, AI, or a bolt dot new, or a cursor, and be able to create your MVP overnight, and to just play around with an idea or a problem that you're trying to solve, and being able to kind of put yourself out there, to lock in capital and to start your next business. I think that people, they're not dumb, right? Like putting Robinhood in the
Hmm.
S&P 500, putting AppLovin in the S&P 500, hopefully soon putting Reddit in the S&P 500. Like they know what they're doing. They're putting high growth companies into the S&P 500 because
Hmm.
they know that they don't want any corrections coming anytime soon. They're putting in the
Hmm.
companies that they know that are going to continue to crush it based off of like EBITDA and low margins and just things that are being sexy. The thing that's
That
going
is
to
such an important point. I hope everyone watching heard what you said. Can you just repeat that again for people? Because I think it is, I mean, that is such an important point, that companies coming into the S&P. It's not just, I mean, like MSTR has thought it's going to come into the S&P for, whatever. And because essentially a lot of people consider it just a Ponzi scheme, and they're not interested in that kind of treasury setup, what if you want to call it that, or as other people think that it's just basically a Ponzi scheme. But the fact that, like you said, they're going after these key companies that are high growth, low margins, um, in order to avoid over, some mass correction. That's
yeah.
a really, really good point.
Yeah, and they're getting rid of the losers, right? So if you wanted to understand, okay, if we go through a correction, what companies are on a short, go short the companies that the S&P just kicked out.
That right there, friends, somebody needs to write it in the chat. That's a gem right there. That's a really good point. Do
Yeah.
you think though that oftentimes that's already kind of baked into the price, and that's why they're already
It's well,
exiting the scene?
here's the thing. If it was baked into the price already, they wouldn't have cut it. But they already are
Hmm.
future forecasting how low this is going to go, and we rather pick up a winner that's going to take over XYZ percentage of the S&P or the QQQs or whatever, that's going to cushion the shortfall. And like, it's all within like a calendar schedule, right? So like when I got into Reddit this year, I got in at $95. I think Reddit's at like 265 right now. or something like that. But I already knew based off of like how AI models are trained and how they ran, like what
Hmm.
companies are going to thrive off of it. And Reddit is one of the biggest like contributors to AI learning because it's all threads and it's all real time data and it's always consuming it. So the fact that Reddit
Hmm.
wasn't already in the S&P was already a telltale sign that okay, when is it going to happen? And every single company and everyone that's watching this call, when you're looking at a company, and as soon as you hear that they get into the S&P 500, what happens to the stock? It shoots.
Hmm.
It shoots like they just did an earnings report and had a blowout earnings
Yep.
because
Because
they
now all of
know.
a sudden every ETF tracking has to just buy that shit up.
Yes, exactly. Now they're absorbed into every
Hmm.
retirement fund, every 401k. You know, it's really manipulation. Like I was really looking at it. I was talking to a couple of my investor buddies I've known for the past like 15 years, and
You
like
are too
I have
young to
friends.
know anybody 15 years.
I have friends. No, I said that have been in this space for the past 15 years. Because this is
Okay, I
my
was
tenth
about to
year.
say
This is
you're
my
very
10th year
young.
trading options. Right. This is my 10th year doing and being in this space. And I've known people that like have been doing this for 15, 25 years.
Hmm.
Like it's crazy because my mom's like, "How do you know this person that's 40 years old?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's my man's." Like, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" Like I'm like, you just you find similarities in life and you
Hmm.
gravitate towards the people that rock with your energy, right? And I
Yep.
don't believe that you should be constrained with your circle based off of your age or your demographic or where you grew up or anything like that, right? And
Hmm.
that's why I love Discord, I love Instagram, I love communities that you've created because we've
Hmm.
created an ecosystem where it's based off of how much do you want it. And if you want it
Hmm.
so freaking much and you're surrounded with other drivers that also want it, then you're just surrounded by good energy and the law of attraction will just carry you to greater heights. Um,
Hmm.
that's just one other point I wanted to mention.
Yeah. It's funny because I really trade gamma. So I'm always looking at open interest, I'm looking at gamma positioning, and so we actually caught some really amazing, like just basically the entire run up on Reddit, Hood, um, APP, and trading all different kinds of structures because that's what I like to do. That's where maybe my passion comes out is like creating these unique structures. But I never saw it from the other point because from the point that you're making about their strength. Because for me, I'm just looking at gamma. If I will chart everything up, but if gamma isn't telling me that we're getting that institutional like pull
Oh,
towards those key strikes, because even with Oracle, I was like, we're gonna go to 400, and everybody was like, "You're
yo,
kidding,
what
right?"
you call
Like,
Oracle 400 is
oh yeah,
crazy.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I called it like 3 weeks before. I was like,
Uh,
Oracle's going to 400, and we set up, a diagonal spread to be able to take advantage of that. Same thing with MongoDB, but all of that, like, from if I'm honest, oftentimes I don't know exactly like what is the information that's going to come out that's going to like allow that flush to happen, or like what the institution knew before they set up those positions, but we see the positioning beforehand, which gives us that like precision in the potential move. But um but it's interesting to hear how you're saying it because you're looking at it. I don't know if fundamentals is the right word, but you are looking at it from like more like fundamentals, business technicals, business cycle data than like my trading style. So it's
yeah,
it's nice to hear that there's like a resonation of like why these things are actually moving, and that it's not just you don't it's not good to see a squeeze that's setting up and it has no purpose behind it. But sometimes like there's so many squeezes setting up that I can't like be the oracle of like knowing what each and
no
every
pun
like
intended.
why they did all the things. So because I'm already like, okay, and now what's the next squeeze that's setting up? But it's very interesting to hear like your perspective because it's actually you're looking at it from a completely different side than I am.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I
I
mean,
found,
I definitely anytime I meet someone that's super technical, I like you have to go follow Trade Speakeasy because she's like the best technical trader that is that knows advanced option trading, right? Like I know a little bit of the advanced stuff, and I like used to partake in it, but I was like, let me just stick to the basics and continue to treat and teach people the basics, because you don't want to teach them technical stuff, because when you teach them the more robust stuff, then they get fatigue and decision
Hmm.
fatigue, and they're like, well, do I do this call and do I sell this call, or do I do this put and do I do this spread, and they're like overthinking it and they never pull the trigger, right? But
Hmm.
people like you break it down and you say, hey, I'm following gamma, right? And I'm sticking to the data, right?
Hmm.
And that's kind of why we built Vetable, is because we realized that there's a lot of biases in the investment space. And if you can
Hmm.
simplify it and make it data just rich and just backed by data where there's no biases, there's nothing, no opinions, and you can just basically move off of that, then you're going to be successful.
Hmm.
I will say, because you mentioned MongoDB, and I wanted to come on this call to give people crazy ass game that they're never going to hear anywhere else. And a company that you should look into if you're watching this live is DigitalOcean.
Okay. Type it in the
DigitalOcean,
chat, friends. Digital Ocean.
DigitalOcean. And I'll let you guys do your research on what DigitalOcean is and who they are and where they're at. But they've been in heavy consolidation. And just from being a startup founder, two-time tech founder now, I've used DigitalOcean twice as being a founder, right? And that just goes to show you that now that we're in this next AI revolution and all these companies are now going to be, distributing cash to AI generated businesses, what is the low cost easy way for me to get my database or whatever up and running faster? And that's DigitalOcean. That's
Hmm.
where everyone is flocking to. People are using AWS and Google and all that, but like from a foundational startup perspective, until
Hmm.
you go and get your funding, a lot of companies are using DigitalOcean. And DigitalOcean is a publicly traded company. They were backed by TechStars years ago, and they were one of the very few companies that came out of TechStars that actually made the stock market and is actually doing fairly well. I think it's a huge sleeper stock, and yeah, for sure.
DONC. So go check them out, friends. Somebody said you need to have a podcast, and I second that.
Me? That's crazy.
Yes, go for it. Do it.
I'm,
Start it. I'll listen. I'll be your
I,
first sign up, whatever, whatever
yeah, for sure.
subscriber. That's the word.
I love that. A lot of people have been telling me that I should do a podcast. What I've been doing on my channel though, if you're tapped in with me, if you have a company, if you have a startup, if you're an investor, if you represent a company, if you're an associate, whatever, reach out to me, because I've been just having conversations and I've been taking little clips of the conversations that I've had that stuck out to me, and I've been posting it like live so people can hear,
Hmm.
like, one, the caliber of conversations that I'm having, and then two, like the people that I'm talking to, and what are the great ideas or the great companies or the things that are on the horizon, like moving forward, and like where are
Hmm.
investors thinking about putting their capital, like moving forward as well, because you're overseas and you have an attachment to like where you're at, but like you're international, and I think because
Hmm.
we're in this digital era, we're all international, right? So how
Hmm.
can we spread this information and spread this love and spread this positivity as fast as possible to reach people, so we can just benefit their lives and not be like a brain rot where people are just kind of just scrolling and not
Hmm.
really taking anything in, right? I think that's going to be one of the biggest downfalls of humanity, is like the attachment to social media and understanding what's real and what's fake. So I was talking
Hmm.
to, like, my future brother-in-law about this the other day, and how, like, with the Charlie Kirk thing, how Trump dropped that video, and my other sister was saying that that was it was a certain type of shot that was shot in Adobe, like Illustrator, right? And then he was saying that no, that was an AI video. And I'm saying that, yo, I don't know what to believe in these days. And you can only, and I'm an educated person. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Imagine the
Yep.
people, the 60s, the 70s, the 50-year-olds, your parents that don't even know how to send an email. Like, what are they thinking about all this content that's
Hmm.
coming out? And you
Hmm.
got people like Elon buying X, and you got Trump that owns a Trump social network. Like, you got these people of power that understand that, hey, if I want to control and brainwash these people, I need to
Hmm.
own these networks. I need to control the narrative. So
Hmm.
like, it's just a very scary time that we're in, and
Hmm.
I'm more appreciative of other companies that are coming out and that are just being very authentic and real. Like, we have this
Hmm.
thing in the startup space that's called building in public, and that's kind of like what we're doing here at Vetable, is like we're building in public to show that, hey, like, we're minority founders, and only 0.0005% of minority founders actually raise venture capital funding. One, so
Mhm,
like we're a motivation already in itself, or I'm a motivation already in itself because I already
mhm,
successfully done it once. But then two, it's like, hey, you too can also have a seat at this table to be able to, bring your ideas, because not everyone is the same. We all think differently. We all have different
mhm,
beliefs. We all have different beginnings, and we all value different things that we think could be a major disruptor. And
mhm,
I think what we're building at Vetable and curating, a really great ecosystem of just brilliant people. We're on the mission of just disrupting the venture capital space and just helping as many people as possible. One question I had for you
yeah.
is, where you're at in your space, what are some things that you're seeing locally that are tracked within the public markets, like for instance Klarna, right? Klarna's huge. I was, day one user of Klarna in my other startup. Like, are you seeing more people shift to that like Klarna space? But are you also seeing people like care more about, the environment? Like, what are some things that you're noticing? Because
Mhm,
for those of you that are on the call, if you're just new to investing and you've never invested in a stock or anything before ever in your life, you want to invest in the things that you're using on a daily basis, or things that you think that will never go out of business. So
mhm,
like, I'm not where you're at, you're not where I'm at, but I'm curious to know from an international
mhm.
perspective, like, what are some of the things that you see on the horizon?
Mhm. So one of the things that I would say, like now, so I've just recently moved from Germany to Montenegro, and being in the Balkans, it's not like we're not in a community that's using an extremely popular language. I mean, like, I mean, they speak what they call like the Balkan mother tongue. So it's like Montenegrin, Croatian, Bosnian, Serbian. Those four countries share like a common base language, even though they're very sensitive about, use calling it one of the other countries. So we speak Montenegrin. And one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of the messaging services, they don't offer immediate translation. So, I used to rarely use Viber, and now I use it all the time because I can literally, like, I pay like €2 a month, and it automatically translates everything. So in our
Oh, that's cool.
school community, like for the kids, each of the kids, the teacher obviously is speaking to us in Montenegrin, but there are a lot of families like that are Ukrainian or Russian background, or, as parents, and then myself being an English speaker. I want to be able to communicate, but I obviously won't be able to do, I don't speak Russian, so I'm not going to be able to communicate like that. But using Viber, like everything is automatically translated for all of us directly into our mother tongue language. And I was shocked by how efficient this process was. Besides the fact that Montenegrin is not it's not a language that's spoken like by like hundreds of millions of people, and Google Translate doesn't have it.
Mm.
So I had to like we have to use a different translation service in order to get Bosnian, Croatian, Montenegrin, Serbian, and so we can't use Google Translate. We can't use WhatsApp. And those are like more the tools that people would use, like,
To
like that
communicate.
I would use back in Germany, because in Germany, that's if I have to speak to like if we're doing a French, German, English conversation and it's complicated, you can just use Google Translate simply. But so I think that there are companies that are really focused on kind of bridging language gaps, which I think is extremely important for companies, especially if they're looking for best in class. And I just think about, like I was mentioning previously in the live with Derek, one of the big things that a lot of like my parents' age colleagues complain about is like China is so advanced compared in so many ways compared to the current education for engineers and geologists and geophysicists, everything relating to and engineering and agriculture. China's like pumping money into their educational services to get as many people to graduate as possible in those different specialities. And so now you have a lot of companies where all of their young hires are coming out of China. And then you again have these like cultural differences, language differences. And I probably wouldn't have felt it so much if you had asked me this question like 5 months ago when I was in Germany. But being in Montenegro now, I'm like, okay, goodness gracious, this is actually um, like what do you call it, that the language barrier can actually end up being a massive issue, but because tools already exist to kind of bridge that gulf, it's very interesting. I think also something that's changing very rapidly is issues of tax. A lot of countries in the European Union are adopting the US tax system. So they're going to this global taxation. So it doesn't matter where you are a resident, if you are a citizen of that country, you still will like have to do your taxes there. And that was really unique to the United States, the global taxation issue. And so it was easy, like if you weren't American, it was very easy to be like, okay, I'm German, but I'm going to go to France, or I'm French and I'm going to go to, you could relocate anywhere in the European Union to hide from those higher tax bracket countries. But now you can't do that anymore because a lot of countries were pissed off with what the United States was
Mm.
doing. And so now they're actually like adopting that global taxation process. So I think a lot of people are going to actually start migrating into other countries that aren't connected to the United States and aren't connected to the European Union. Because if you want to build a business and you are in a startup kind of, bootstrapping situation, then a country like Malta or Cyprus that have these kind of interfaces with the European Union will no longer really be like the tax shelters that you used to think of them as being. So I think that there are other countries around the world outside of those locations that are going to really start popping up as like true like lifestyle hubs so that people can spend part of their year, 6 months of the year in that country in order to use that as like their new tax residency. I mean, Americans also have Puerto Rico, so you could do that if you
Right.
want. But
Yeah.
for other people that were used to doing 3 months in and out inside the European Union, you won't be able to do that anymore. So then you need to find other countries that will be able to kind of um, yeah, give you that like tax wrapper. And I think, Montenegro is a country that has been doing that. I don't know how long they'll be able to keep that up because they do want to join the European Union, supposedly. But you have like Cape Verde is becoming like a hot kind of tech hub. And you have these like smaller locations that people hadn't really thought about before that I think are going to start, um, like building some energy with tech startups and crypto startups
Yes.
because they will have that foundation for them. But how is that immediately investable? I'm not sure, except for the translation thing. Duolingo, what was that? I couldn't believe the chart of Duolingo. That was just like that gap up
Insane.
on earnings
It was insane.
was crazy.
But then when Apple dropped their headphones with the live translations, Duolingo sold off, right? So
Yep.
it's very interesting, like Apple, right? And that Apple event. I've personally raised my price targets on Apple after seeing that event. I think that was a some people are saying it was a letdown, but I think like from a business fundamental perspective, like yes, we already been knew Apple was behind in the AI race, right? But I
Hmm.
also know that Apple has enough money on hand to go and buy a privately held AI company and then absorb
Yep.
them into their whole ecosystem, right? And I know that Apple has been running such a seamless business that it just takes them a week to buy the company and then just to implement it into their ecosystem in no time,
Hmm.
right? What I really love about Apple with that live translation thing is the fact that it's going to connect people closer together, right? Like
Hmm.
we're living in an era where social media is actually, if you're not leveraging it properly, it's distancing ourselves together, right? But we have companies like
Hmm.
Apple that are focusing on the happiness level of people that are using their product and how can I connect people faster and in real time is with these headphones, for example, right?
Hmm.
Part two is this cooling mechanism that they have in the new iPhone 17 Pro Max, which I think that
Hmm.
they're setting up the next. generation of phones to have like internal cooling, and people are thinking, well, shit, I'm so tired of my phone that's overheating, or being too cold, so this is going to be great. But
Mhm.
I'm thinking it on the developer standpoint of, hey, now you're putting this really powerful machine that I don't need my computer to run these AI LLMs anymore. I can run this on
Mm.
my phone. If I can run this on my phone, I can be anywhere in the world building. And if Apple sets the precedent for builders, then there's going to be builders around the whole entire world that are just going to be buying this phone. I think the iPhone Air was just a drop to get people to just go and buy the 17 Pro Max.
Okay.
I think
I
is
have to
that's
say,
that's just
I
their
was
business
not
model.
even thinking about it from that point of view because honestly, I like everybody's so I feel like everyone's so pro Apple all the time that I always feel like I have to take like the opposite side of the conversation. So I'm always like the anti Apple, which doesn't make any sense because I mean, I'm using an
Right.
iPhone and like, but I won't lie that I think that I, what I tell people is I don't have a problem with Apple. And if I, the shares that I've had forever, those shares, I will keep them. I don't need them to be like super productive. But for new traders, I always feel like Apple is like one of the first companies people think about investing in. And I just don't know that they have the momentum to give people the returns that they're looking for. So if you're like buying to keep it for the next, 20, 30 years, then go for it. Do your dollar cost averaging. But if you're like trying to actively trade week over week, Apple's not my favorite. I just
But I,
find
I
that it
will
takes a
say
really long time to be productive.
I will say to your point, right? Apple is Apple used to be a growth stock. It's no longer in growth mode, right? It's kind of like halting its slowdown. But that is the to your other point of like first time investors, they buy Apple stock, right? When Robinhood first came out and you were able to get a free share, sometimes people got an Apple share, right? I know some couple people I got an actual Apple share in their like free Robinhood stock, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, if you think about it, and where the biggest funds are concentrated in what they're holding, Apple is one of them, and that's the reason why Apple hasn't swung below a certain type of, below the moving
Mhm.
average or whatever, right? So it's always a good safe bet. Although they shit the bed on this AI space, they still are able to hold that multi-trillion-dollar
Mhm.
market cap. And what does that tell you about the company? Just like overall, is that if it's not going to swing, the price is not going to swing so crazy. It's a safe
Mhm.
place for me if I have $10 million to put, because I know that my $10 million will not go to $5 million within a
Yeah.
year or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I know that my money is parked in a very secure
You're
place.
not putting 10 million on CoreWeave?
I do like CoreWeave too. I mean, Nvidia is investing a shit ton of money into CoreWeave, and CoreWeave is, they're finished their lockup period from after IPO. And like for those of you that are watching this, like if you invest in a company at IPO, typically you're in like a 6 months lockup period, so you can't sell it. And if you do sell it, you're like get
Mhm.
flagged as like some type of trader. But like
Mhm.
CoreWeave, that time is kind of ending. So I do see
Mhm.
CoreWeave bouncing and going back to all time highs, like
Mhm.
this year type shit.
Yeah.
Um, CoreWeave is a great company. Like I can go on and on about CoreWeave, but
But I was just kidding. Obviously, if you wanted a conservative bet, CoreWeave probably
oh
isn't
no
where
no,
you put
CoreWeave
your
is super
10 million.
volatile, right? Like I wouldn't put
Yeah.
$10 million into CoreWeave overnight. There's no way. Just because of like how crazy this price swings, right? Similar to like
Hmm.
Circle, similar to like Bullish, but like these IPOs, Figma as well. Like these companies, they're just so new on the market that they really haven't found their like footing, their grounding.
Yep.
I usually like to wait like a year before I take a more sizable position. Like I got into Figma at IPO, which is great, and I'm sitting on those
Hmm.
shares, but like I can't get out of those shares, right? Like I'm taking like although I got in an IPO at like $30 or $33 or whatever,
Hmm.
like it's at $50. But if you look at the chart, this is the lowest it's been. But because I got in at IPO, like I'm still
Hmm.
good, right? And that's why a
Yeah.
lot of these IPO like bets, they can be risky, but they could also be rewarding. Like Airbnb, for example, right? Like
Hmm.
Airbnb IPO'd and Airbnb never came back to that IPO price. Um,
Yep.
like Robinhood IPO'd and Robinhood sunk way below their IPO. And I told a couple of friends like years ago to buy up shares at $10, and now they're thanking me because look at Robinhood now.
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Um,
they should be thanking you. They should be taking you to a Michelin star
No,
restaurant.
no.
So
I
one of
say that
their
because like
shares.
we all want the same thing. We all want the goal of financial freedom, right? So why
Hmm.
would I charge someone like I would only charge somebody if they were like taking up a significant amount of my time, right?
Hmm.
Other than that, I believe that community should be free. I believe that people should just want to help each other and not look for anything in return. Because how are we going to advance as a civilization together, especially if we're lower than the 1%, to be able to kind
Hmm.
of tackle those bigger goals?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I will say that some things that you should consider looking out for from now until like next year around this time would be like Nvidia's GTC developer conference. I think that's going to be absolutely crazy. I think Tesla may come out with another AI day.
Hmm.
Um, I think that, when this Tesla robot comes out, it's going to shock the whole entire market of
Hmm.
how fast they're going to ramp up on it. And I think that there's some institutions that are catching wind on it already, and that's why we've seen some crazy bullish pumps on Tesla recently.
Hmm.
And then also a company, if you want to get into the autonomy driving space, a company that I am very deep in is a company called WeRide. I got in
Hmm.
around $10. I think it's under like around like nine or something right now. But like Waymo and Tesla, I believe, will capture the entire U.S. market very fast. I feel like Waymo already
Hmm.
has the market. I think Tesla, they'll be able to get the market within like 2 to 3 years eventually. If Elon kind of stays the course of what his vision is, and if he can unlock this pay
Hmm.
package for $1 trillion, I believe Elon will be the first trillionaire, passing Larry. Um, Secondly, if you want to back other international companies in this autonomous driving space,
Hmm.
WeRide is one of your best bets. WeRide
Hmm.
and I think it's Pony.ai. But I like WeRide because I really rock with the CEO and I've watched a ton of interviews with him. And I
Hmm.
like their robo taxis. I like their robo bus. I like their idea of sustainability is having like autonomous sweepers on the street, right? Like,
Hmm.
yes, it's removing the job of that sweeper that was already working those hours, but now you have something that's running 24/7 that's helping the planet 24/7, right?
Hmm.
And if you have something like that, I think that you can easily go and get a government contract, right?
Hmm.
One of my buddies asked me the other day was like, "Hey, do you think that the Tesla Cybertruck was a flop or was it a good hit for Elon?" And
Hmm.
I think the Cybertruck, he made it for the public as a consumer car, but I think deep down, if you look at underneath the hood, I think militaries and defense companies are buying the
Hmm.
Cybertrucks because of one, it's an EV, and two, how
Hmm.
big it is, and three, how
Hmm.
much you can use out of it. But they're not flashing it. He's not showing all this news. Like
Hmm.
the news that comes out on the market, it's coming out on the market for a specific reason,
Hmm.
for a specific like meaning. Like they're not going to show you all of the other greater things that they have because this other thing is going to take better spotlight. This is going to what's
Right.
going to drive the eyeballs more. But best believe that there are things that are out there that are making headwinds. Like Palantir came out of nowhere, but now Palantir is one of the biggest defense companies ever. Like
Seriously.
Anduril is one of the biggest privately held defense companies ever, and he came from Palantir, right? Like
Yeah.
it's very interesting this defense space.
Both you and Derek mentioned this company. So when they're not a privately held company, because
Well,
I'm
here's the
sure they
thing.
will.
Companies like Robinhood are now about to give you access to invest into private companies like OpenAI, Anduril,
Yeah.
SpaceX, things like that. So you no longer need to be a accredited investor, right? Like the
Hmm.
people that have access to these private markets are called accredited investors, and you need to have two
Right.
hundred fifty thousand dollars liquid cash. Like I got to go to the bank
Hmm.
and be able to take that out for me to be an actual accredited investor, along with some other
Hmm.
things, right? But people like Vlad that want to disrupt this whole space is like saying, "Hey, we're going to unlock this private market now to the public.
Hmm.
What is that going to do? I truly don't know because that's never happened before."
Hmm.
So like it's a very interesting time that we're in. What do you think about like this Fed decision that's coming up?
Yeah. That this. So I think that, just I'll be, fast for the sake of time, but um, I mean, I think that they'll come out and do 25%, a 25-point cut. And if they do that, that's accommodative and the markets will feel okay about that and they'll feel fine. And we'll probably, I don't know that we get like a massive pop up, but we will at least not have that, like, the September that everybody's kind of waiting for. But if they come out, and so part of the thing right now is that the Cleveland Fed and the Atlanta Fed are a lot of the data that they've been putting out. So for people that don't know, each regional Fed kind of, they put out data that's like specifically to their environment. So, in the Rust Belt states, that Fed is like talking a lot about what's happening with manufacturing. And then in other, so the different Feds come out with completely unique information. So if you're looking at the Cleveland Fed, which is doing a lot of work on like looking under the hood of employment and types of growth and where the growth is coming from, if in the summary of economic projections, if you start to see that there's like a massive divergence between the different voting members and the regions that they come from, and then from where they had been, I think this could cause some kind of nervousness in the system. And Powell is going to know about that before we do, and so are the regional feds. So there could be data that's under the surface that we haven't yet been privy to. So that's always like a question mark that you can't pretend like doesn't exist. And you have to, and that when Powell comes out, he is going to highlight some of those things during the Q&A session. So I think that more as okay, if they stick with 25 points, everything is kind of status quo. If they do 50 points, they are going to make people nervous. And your first reaction is probably going to be a down move just on that news. And then if in the presser, he kind of explains it and he can explain it in a way that makes sense, that they're not stressed out, but they do want to just, get ahead of the situation because the labor market is much tighter than what, that the labor market is kind of rolling over in a way that they hadn't really anticipated 3 to 6 months ago. Um, then if he can explain it nicely, we may not get then the second leg down, because normally with Jay Powell, that during any of the pressers you get a first reaction and then you give back the entire reaction, so you end up with like a really
Flat,
flat
flat.
move
Yeah.
over, like, the from the time that the rate cut comes out to when he steps onto the podium to when he kind of does the presser. It's kind of just
But if you're
one of these
scalping, I
things
mean,
over.
you're lit,
Yeah.
right? If you're scalping
Yeah,
both ends, then you're good.
but if he comes out and he's at all, if he's at all like giving people the sentiment that they're worried about stagflation or they're worried about reflation, but they need to be concerned about the labor market. Now that they've kind of lost both sides of their mandate, because they have the two-sided mandate about price stability and full employment. So if they signal that they think no, inflation is still likely to go up and unemployment is also likely to go up, then there may not many sorry about that. Um, they don't have enough mechanisms to be able to respond to all of the questions. So um, to deal with both sides of those issues simultaneously, because they just have a very narrow tool belt, increase and decrease rates, and then the forward guidance. So could give us the move down. Now, I think that probably the other issue that we're facing that's happening simultaneously with FOMC is that we have no more gamma above us. So for the entire year, we had been after like so before April, we had gamma stacked at 63, 64,
Wait,
65,
before, like,
67.
for those like followers that don't know what gamma is, could you just say like briefly what gamma is? Because they can
Yeah,
hear what it
so
is, they don't understand what
basically,
does it
yeah,
mean.
so basically what gamma is like the acceleration of the value of your options contracts. And so what happens is when you have a cluster of open interest or open contracts that are sitting anywhere. Let's say that you've bought the contracts, the broker has basically sold those contracts to you. And then what they do is they turn around in order to be delta neutral, they buy up underlying shares. So let's take it away from S&P and let's talk about like an actual company. So let's say that you bought 100 calls on Apple and the broker sold those calls to you. And let's say that that was at a 10 delta. So they have 100 short contracts at a 10 delta. Now they have to go and buy up the relevant number of shares, which would be like 1,000 shares. So they go out and they buy 1,000 shares of Apple. But then what does that do? That with the overall participation of the market, the price
Volume.
moves up. As the price moves up, the delta that you bought is no longer a 10 delta. Now it's, let's say, a 15 delta. So now they're short 15 delta. They only hedged 10 delta.
And
So what do? They have to buy more shares. And that's what creates these gamma squeezes because
Jesus.
it becomes like kind of, reflexive. So when you're looking out at these open interest clusters and you're seeing how those positions are changing, you can see that, okay, it is possible for price to get to point X. If you're looking at a chart and you're like, oh, okay, I think PayPal can go to 580, you need to see that there's like sitting at 500 or 580 or whatever this crazy number is that you came up with, um, that to push the price in that direction. And so as you get closer to expiration, that gamma starts to speed up. The gamma number starts to move from like a 0 to potentially all the way up to like a 22. So this acceleration gives you those like really fast squeezes into that expiration date. So that's why often on Fridays you get these massive like runs up or these massive drops on underlyings, and it
OTD.
has to do with where that open interest is sitting. So, for something like an S&P, which I like to trade often, I want to see like where those areas are because I want to know that I'm positioning myself realistically. I'm not like buying leaps 500 strikes out the money. I'm buying them where price is actually. And so for a long time, we had all that gamma built up. We had the April drop, but none of that gamma changed. None of those open interest positions shifted. So no institutions weren't taking profits. They were just letting those contracts sit there and then like adding contracts maybe a bit lower down the chain as the price would go back up. But since this time, since we've reached near this 6,600 area, we have gamma above us. So unless somebody leaks something on Monday or Tuesday that will allow people to reposition themselves, I think it'll be hard for us to make too big of a move to the upside. But we have now a lot of contracts clustering around specifically for the Wednesday at the 6550, 6500, and down at the 6400. The 6400 is like a massive hedge strike. So if Powell does any kind of thing that worries the market, we could see then that will flush down. We won't see the natural momentum of the rate cut comes out, you have a pop, and then he starts talking and we give it back, or we get a little bit of a drop and then we take it back and then go back in our normal like
Trend
bullish course of
for the day.
action. We
Right.
could get like a bearish move and then another bearish move if what he says triggers any. The big thing with gamma is that if you're too far away from an open interest strike, so it's not important that there's a lot of open interest there, but the current price has to be close enough to that open interest to ignite the gamma because gamma is always highest at the money.
Mm,
So if you like think about just like the normal bell curve, if you're too far away, like on the edges, Gamma's not really going to do anything for you to like move the price. But if you're like grinding down or grinding up towards an open interest, and you're starting to get closer to the inside the bell curve, then suddenly that's when you get like all the things align and you get that massive squeeze to the upside or to the downside. So that's the only thing that gives me a bit of pause, because we have the summary of economic projections. We'll get the dot plot. We'll see what the different regional feds think. We'll see what they're kind of saying underneath the surface, and that could like highlight areas of reflation that people aren't really thinking about. It could cause us to look at areas of unemployment that maybe we hadn't really been um, like taking seriously enough, or it could reveal like weakness in the labor market, which people hadn't been paying attention to because payrolls and the employment numbers from the BLS were looking so strong. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see so many cracks beneath the surface. People are going to really start to like dissect the data, and that could cause a new kind of volatility. So we'll see.
Wow, that was amazing. You just killed it. That was a masterclass in gamma, guys. Like,
Thank you.
wow, that's off. That was yeah. Because no, because that's one thing, right? Is like after I do these calls or whatever, people are like, "Well, this was a great call. Like, I love your energy, but sometimes I didn't understand like the words that you were saying. Like,
Hmm.
I had to like stop and chat GPT some of the acronyms and stuff, and then come back and then be more engaged. But like, I feel like people value it when you kind of take the time, take a step back, and explain exactly what is the T terminology that you're mentioning and how does that
Hmm.
relate to them and how can they apply it into their now new arsenal of instruments moving forward. And I love trading gamma, right? I think trading gamma on Fridays is like the easiest way to either 10x your account or blow your account, right?
Yeah, be
So
careful.
choose wisely for sure.
Let's. Derek was also asking a question. Okay, um, so so Zay thinks that it's possible that we get 50, um,
I
and
think the market wants 50, but I think if we
but
get a
then
25,
Derek
yeah.
said, yeah, it would be crazy. It would be a sign of stress, and I think more than it has to be 50, because at this point the Fed funds rate is already like the forward looking futures are already like baking in like at least three cuts this year and another. So if they do 50, but they signal they're only going to do one more in the year, but they're just pulling like two into this month, that might not be too dramatic. But if they do 50 and they indicate that they still might do two more cuts, that's where you're going to feel, that's where
Yes,
you
you're
could
gonna get
really
the
see a
fair.
6,400.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I think it's not it's like I think the market wants 50, but we may get 25, right? But to your point, how
mhm,
many other rate cuts are we going to get? If we're not
mhm,
going to get as many as we hope, then we may have like a smooth kind of flat landing, right? But if
mhm,
it's like 50 now and then like two other 25s, then like okay, we're going to be kind of fucked. But we have to understand like why do they even do these rate cuts in the first place? It's so they can re-stimulate the economy, right?
mhm,
It's so we can combat these things of inflation and these these job reports and also like the housing market too. Like companies like
mhm,
Restoration Hardware, they are like one of my top companies that I'm looking at when I'm looking at these rate cuts because of where they're standing in their space in their moat in this market of understanding, okay, what do they do, how do they satisfy this demand? If we have XYZ cut, then this is going to mean this for the macro economy. How is this
mhm,
going to affect a company like Restoration Hardware, right?
mhm,
Restoration Hardware has been taking a complete beating, but I think that if we get really
mhm.
good numbers or good news, that this company can easily pop up.
Yep.
Because it's a good company. It's just like the macroeconomics
Mhm.
that kind of hold it back. But
Yeah.
actually, what's funny is this whole conversation, the chat kind of disabled for me, so I haven't seen
Oh, no.
any of the comments or anything. I don't
Oh,
know who's in this room, but shout out to Zay, shout out to Monk. Like I love those guys, great guys. Shout out
yeah,
to
yeah.
Mars, shout out to
You
my
have a great
CEO.
following. Thank you.
Shout out to everybody
Everybody's
that
giving
rides
you
for me.
100% right on bullseye. So, yeah, I don't know why Instagram does that. It's like halfway through the conversation, and the other person will just not see the chat anymore, which I think is, I don't know why they do that. They need to fix that. Instagram, I know you're listening. Fix that.
They're always listening.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If you give like the wrong word for like
Oof.
6 months, they won't show anybody that you're on live. My mom used to be like, "Aren't you live right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm like." She's like, "I don't see it at all. I don't even see that you're on at all." I'm like, "Yeah, that's Instagram for you."
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this week we have, with we're coming up to, um, OPEX, and we're we're coming up to the FOMC meeting, and then
Quad
of
witching.
course, we have quad witching. So, there's a lot going on in these 2 weeks that could create volatility. And we just haven't seen a lot of volatility. I mean, volatility was like sitting at 18, like 18 forever. So, now I think at the end of the week, we were up at like 20 something, like, or, yeah, the low 20s. So as if we keep up with that, then you're going to start to see more cracks beneath the surface, and you will want to be careful. Now, you can position yourself for downside activity. I know that there are a lot of people that play short puts. They like short puts. So, when companies were dropping massively, I did tell people you can use a short put almost as like limit order, so that if in the pre-market or the post-market you get a really strong drop down, you can get tapped in at some like really phenomenal prices with your favorite stocks. But you do want to be cautious, because if we start to see like selling begets selling, you could get a lot more downside action than maybe what you were preparing for. So be sure, like, if you are doing any strategy, that it's on a company that you really like, it's a company that you want to keep, and it's a company that you are willing to hold, even if it does make a bigger dip down than what you're expecting. Because, I mean, things like AMD have started to run. NVIDIA's obviously been running, AVGO's been running, PanW's been running. A lot of the semiconductors, they're at really high prices, but I don't think that um, it's not unreasonable that they could see a little bit of downside action from these levels, and you could get tapped in at good prices, but they could go down further than maybe what you're expecting if the news is bad.
Yeah, I will say that you made a ton of great points. If people don't want to trade things that are going to be heavily weighed upon other major indexes like the S&P, the QQQ, the Russell 100, trade companies that are not in these indexes, because then when these indexes move fast, your
Hmm.
stock itself won't move to their degree because it's not carried within these, indexes and things like that, or these funds or these
Hmm.
ETFs. That's why personally I really loved Reddit, was because Reddit is not in the S&P right now. I think Reddit may be in another ETF, but like I just love the fact of taking advantage of this opportunity over the past 6 months, because once
Hmm.
it gets in the S&P, it's not going to be the same. It's similar to like before Tesla was in the S&P and I was in Tesla before the S&P. Like, it's like you got to enjoy these things while it lasts, and like kind of coming full circle for like my startup founders that are on the call.
Hmm.
When you're first starting your company and you're raising your pre-seed and you lock in your pre-seed, enjoy the money of when you have your pre-seed. Enjoy the time where you're at in this stage of your company, because when you get to your seed stage, it's not the same. When you get to your Series A, it's not the same. When you get to your
Hmm.
Series B, it's not the same. Like, you're always going to be growing, you're always going to be changing, you're always going to be evolving, but like take the
Hmm.
time to smell the flowers and enjoy the moment, cuz here
Hmm.
today, gone tomorrow.
That's a really, really good point. That's actually that's a really phenomenal point. Um, Yeah, so I think that, there's a lot changing in the economy, and it's amazing, like just the speed at which we can that get data, speed at which data is coming at us constantly. I think there's a lot to it that at this point we haven't yet, um, we're kind of all like moving, and we're keeping the momentum of the movement. But I do think that there is going to come a time where things get enough out of whack that then things need to take a bit of a pause. I think Trump is really, really good at understanding where a narrative is going and then being able to change the way the narrative is going to be spun before it gets to the negative point. And that's why even in 2017 the market was like just straight up. And
Maybe.
we're seeing that again because he is constantly getting ahead of the conversation because he understands marketing, he understands PR. Like whatever your opinions are about him is irrelevant. And one of the things I told what I told, inside our Discord, I was talking to the members. I said, everybody knows that in September we're likely to get this negative seasonality. So because of that, people are already like, you know, themselves and like, are starting to figure out like, oh, what do I do if we get a big
Trimming
drop?
positions, yeah.
But but sometimes because you already know the thing is going to happen, it doesn't happen like that anymore. But one of the things I think is really unique in this year is that Trump Trump knows that to keep people happy, the market has to keep his people happy. The market has to continue to stay strong. And we cannot anticipate what he will do to keep it moving forward because he wants those 401ks to remain really high.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I'm like, let's not underestimate that Trump also has his own agenda and
He
he
does.
may not be interested in rec timber and he might not be interested in no, and now he basically has the Fed doing exactly what he
What he
wants. How,
wants.
how he spins that narrative to kind of keep things like going forward, um that we can't anticipate. So I told people, I said, don't get so deep in your bias that all Trump has to say is, I don't know, we're tripling the child benefit, and we're going to put it in our sovereign wealth fund from the shale from the Gulf of Mexico or whatever. The market is just going to see another 100 points like that. So we can't like underestimate his capacity to do fanfare at exactly the right time. So, you can
This
know
is
what
this
Powell's
is a
going to
very
do.
resilient. This is a very resilient market. This is one of the craziest markets I've ever seen in my life. I've never went a full year and seen every single dip get bought out. This whole year, every single dip that has ever happened this year has gotten bought out. There has not been a single dip that has continued to sell for like more than 9 days. We haven't had 9 consecutive red days this entire year. Like
It's
that's
crazy.
unheard of. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But like that goes to show you that there's more people that are coming in. I'm just buying and buying and buying. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking like, yo, is this going to be just a crazier gap up? And like, when does this stop? When does this end? Right? And that's why I like talking to Zay and Monk and these guys because like we all entertain each other's bull case. We all entertain each other's bear case, right?
Mhm.
And you as well. Like you're at the table as well. It's like it's good to put all these things out into the air so we all know and we're all
Mhm.
not like blindsided when certain things happen.
Mhm.
And I think just like cross collaborating and making sure that like all this data is accessible and
Mhm.
for people that took their time out of their day to jump on this live, like definitely thank you. And thank you for this platform as well. I think that at the end of the day, like we're gonna start to see companies start to rebound, like UNH. They've already started as soon as Warren Buffett kind of said his stake in it. People
Yep.
are like, okay, it's green light. Warren's in. We're all in, right? Um, Alibaba. I mean, me and Zay used to talk about Alibaba back in the Matrix with Mark, and now like I am more bullish on Alibaba right now than ever in my life.
Yeah.
Like
All the
I think
Chinese stocks are doing amazing.
all the
JD, New
Chinese
Web,
stocks. Yes, but I'm
all of
saying
them.
specifically Alibaba. Oh
Mhm.
my god! Like, and you got to think about like China is random, like communism. So like, you don't really truly understand what do they even have in store. Like, they're very
Mhm.
selective of the type of information that they give out. And with all this AI that's coming out and all these things that are like self-generated, you truly don't know what's coming, like what's real and what's fake. So I'm very interested to see the type of videos, the type of formats, the type of information, like like what's being spread, how is it being spread, who's spreading it, right?
Hmm.
Like to your point, I think Trump knows the market by now. He's been in the market for over 40 years realistically. So
Hmm.
like that, and that's outside of his presidency. Now that he's in presidency, he knows what's going to make the market go up and he knows what's going to make a market go down, and he knows the type of timeline that it takes for him to have a bear market but still
Hmm.
please these people so they can have a time to buy in
Hmm.
and then just rip it.
Yep, it's very true. So I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on, for joining me. I hope you will come back soon because this has been such even for me. I love when you guys join because it's also such an educational time for me. We're looking at the world from, our own locations, our own expertise, our own careers, and we're all seeing different things. And I always feel like, when we're kind of not debating because it's not like we're but we're like having these conversations. I think that we're hitting different tones in the conversation, and it's I think that it resonates with the people, but it also helps them consider completely different aspects. Because I think if someone just was listening to me week over week, they would eventually kind of be able to guess what I would say. But having the discourse, it I think allows other areas and topics to be able to be considered that are really important to the people. So thank you so much for joining, and I hope you will come back again. And yeah, maybe if Instagram would actually let us have 4 people on at a time, it would be actually interesting for us at Derek and Zay to be in this like these 4 quadrants, but Instagram always messes up once you have more than 3 people on the call. But yeah, we need to do it again, and we'll definitely have some other voices. Thanks also to all the people who joined us today. I hope you guys were listening. I hope you benefited from the chat because Amit gave us dropped a million gems in the conversation, and you will see them again because we will repost post clips from the conversation, so you'll be able to digest it one more time, but definitely go back, listen again if you didn't catch from the beginning. But again, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you'll come back again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a blessed holiday and week, and I'll see you guys next time.
Yep. All right. I'll say good night and goodbye for now.
Bye. Thank you.